Welcome to Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about the intersection of science, faith, and pop culture and how culturally relevant topics can be used to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with Dr. Fazale Rana. You're a biochemist and a comic book nerd.
I am.
Right?
Yeah, I am.
Same here. You know, we love comics, and a lot of times people think, you know, for Christians, it doesn't really make sense how we can connect that to our faith. Yeah. It's just a hobby, but for us, it's not, right?
Yeah. I think comics are a profound expression of the human condition. And so I see all kinds of connection points between comic book story arcs and the Christian faith.
Totally. Yeah. Same here. I mean, some of the ones that I love when I think of The Watchmen, I mean, that one's just so dark, but, you know, it helps us to kind of understand the brokenness of the world. And what are some of yours that...
Well, one comic book that I've read recently that I found to be really interesting is the infamous Iron Man story arc, and it's featuring Dr. Doom, who's one of my favorite supervillains in the Marvel Universe. He's the arch nemesis of the Fantastic Four, and he turns out to go from a supervillain into a superhero because he attains everything that he wants as a supervillain and finds it dissatisfying, and he realizes that true meaning is only going to be found in actually helping people and actually being a hero and doing good. So it's an interesting story of redemption of sorts.
And you touch on such a wonderful point, because you do see redemption in comics and in books and films. One of the kind of infamous ones is with Darth Vader, and you see him being redeemed, not because he realizes that it's in helping people that he finds value, but I mean, that is what he ends up doing, but it's really in his son believing that there's still good in him, and that motivates him to change and to do good. And of course, he dies right at the end, spoiler, but you know, it's something that we see, and it's very prevalent in comics and in stories in general, that you see these kind of story arcs of redemption. Yeah. And so just share a little bit more about how you connect that then kind of on a personal level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, you know, the whole idea of a redemptive story arc is somebody that's broken, that's incomplete, that's flawed, that's bad becomes good, becomes whole, becomes complete. They grow. And I think we all see in ourselves in those characters that are broken and bad, because we know that we are that way ourselves. Right. And yet we know that there's also good in us, and that we see good in those characters. And so when we see that person go away from bad to good, it's something that we desire ourselves as human beings. And it's a yearning, I think, we all have for redemption. Right.
And you know what I love about the idea of comics in particular, you know, they're set in these fantastic worlds. So we're able to detach ourselves enough to let those stories of redemption resonate without it being too preachy. Because if it were set in a natural world, we can kind of see right through it. But because we're dealing with people with superpowers and flying and other planets, it isn't as obvious, but yet it is able to strike a tone with people that they connect and it resonates with them.
Right.
And they feel the need to be redeemed.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the value of using comic books to build a bridge to our need for redemption, because they're not threatening.
Right.
To talk about these things is fun, it's non-threatening, but yet the themes, as you point out, are so powerful that it's a great way just to naturally segue into some deeper spiritual issues.
Right. And that's perfect, a perfect conversation to have during the holiday season, especially because we're reminded, as Christians, we're reminded of our need for redemption. So because we're Christians and we're engaging in this content, we don't just see, yes, that I'm broken and I do need redemption, but we see then where we get that redemption from.
Yeah.
So how would you step into that conversation?
Well, I mean, to me, it's this idea that as human beings, we bear God's image, and that's the good that's within us, but yet that good has been overwhelmed by sin, and that sin separates us from our Creator. But it's amazing to think that our Creator still sees that value in us and is willing now to rescue us, you know, to send the superhero in the form of Jesus, fully God and fully human, to sacrifice himself so that that good within us could be recovered and our relationship could be restored. And so that theme is again echoed in Dr. Doom's transformation and Darth Vader's transformation.
Yeah. And it really is beautiful to think then when we compare what's happening in these stories to what happens in the story of the Bible and the Christmas story of God stepping into our world and redeeming us and finding us worthy of redemption. It's just such a beautiful thing, and it does unfold in these comic books too. So
yeah, well, and if there's ever any question that a person feeling as if they lack value, that value is clearly demonstrated, I think, by the extent that God went to rescue us. And so God sees the good in us, and hopefully we can see the good in one another and reach out and try to recover that good fully.
Yeah, and it's such a good thing, I think, when we read these comics, to then be able to share that with others, and that's one way to have kind of an open door to share our faith and talk about redemption in these stories, and then what's available in Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Fuz. If you want to hear more from Dr. Rana, visit reasons.org and check out the Cells design. Now we're going to head to a clip from our AMP conference, and we're going to hear from Paul Copan about whether truth is relative. Let's check it out.